Redditors who have objected at weddings or seen someone object. What happened in the next 5 minutes? Lot of laughs. My friend's older brother is a lawyer. He was marrying a lawyer. Most of their friends are lawyers. The officiant was a judge who was a friend of his. He and his fiancée thought it would be funny to plant someone in the audience. They got a friend to yell "I object," to which the judge yelled "overruled." It seemed to have gone over well for most, but I don't think some of their family members got it. I'm dying to see the wedding video of it, and not the shitty cell phone version. From the last time this was posted, when the pastor got to the part "or forever hold your peace," the bride said, "yes, I'd like to say something." Then she turned around to her guests and said, "I'd like to thank my maid of honor for sleeping with my fiancé last night." With that, she threw her bouquet and stormed off. The story even made it on the radio at the time. Not really an objection, but a friend of mine works at a wedding venue. She told me about one wedding where the best man made some jokes in his speech about the time that he slept with the bride. He assumed that the groom already knew about it. He didn't. Groom was not happy. The reception ended up getting cancelled and all the guests were sent home. This happened at one of my friend's siblings' weddings. Her parents are super conservative and hadn't gotten the chance to know the daughter's fiancé very well before they got married. In their minds, all that was relevant about him was that he was 10 years older than her and had been previously divorced. They had made subtle and not so subtle comments here and there before the wedding that they weren't happy about it. It should have been a forewarning of what was to come. The day of the wedding, everything was beautiful. Friend's sister and her fiancé were ecstatic to be getting married and invited friends and family from both sides to their outdoor wedding. All was going well until the preacher asks the audience if anyone has objections to why they should get married. And as serious as can be, dad of the bride stands up and says her mother and I object, and then after a long hesitation sits back down. Silence. No one can believe that just happened. Not knowing exactly how to handle it, the preacher just says okay and finishes the ceremony as planned. I can't even imagine how the bride and groom must have felt. My friend says the tension in the room was unbelievable, but they got married all the same. They just do a lot of avoiding the aisles, as one might imagine. It happened at my wedding. Sort of. My middle brother has a very odd sense of humor that occasionally causes issues. One of those issues is that he likes to whip his balls out at random times and see how long it takes people to notice. The night before the wedding, he told me that at some point during the ceremony he was going to cough loudly, and that would mean his sack was out. I laughed it off. Our officiant got to the "speak now or forever hold you peace" bit, and I hear a cough from where my brother was sitting. Both my husband and I whipped around in disbelief, but the audience thought we were daring any of them to say something, I guess, so they all laughed. Little did they know what was actually going down in the crowd. Oh god. This reminds me of a close friend of mine's wedding. Known this dude for years. We'll call him Ray. Meets a girl we'll call Katie. She already had a daughter. Cool, right? Was never married to the other dude, just didn't click. Very amicable separation. Shared custody of the child. No fighting. No demand for child support. Very perfect world. The Katie was pretty cool and got along with our friend group pretty well. Soon enough, the old boyfriend she had her daughter with becomes best friends with Ray. Couple years go by, Ray and Katie decide to get married. And around this time, he confided in me that frequently his best friend i.e. the daughter's father, I'll name Jeff, made references to this girl, and there was some vague evidence of it not being as amicable a separation as it seemed. Jeff was pretty quiet about his life and talked about girls pretty often, but we learned later he had actually been holding out for Katie all that time. So assuming Jeff was his best friend, Ray makes him one of the groomsmen along with myself at the wedding. Keeps telling Ray about how great Katie is, not to choke, I'm here for you, etc. Ray told him to stop cause he was psyching him out. So, that song and dance is happening and the ceremony is about to begin. Finally meet back up with my so at our table, Katie and Jeff's daughter is playing on the dance floor. Suddenly the music stops, and the DJ says this song is from Jeff to Katie, and says he still loves her, and that it should be him. Cue it Cold Bean Me by Billy Ray Cyrus blasting all over the hall. Then Jeff goes up and gets on one knee and asks Katie to dance with him and be his wife. She slaps him Ray loses his shit and gets in a fight. Cops got called. Wedding ruined. I noped the fuck back to the hotel with my and let them all figure it out on their own. They're divorced now. I officiated a wedding where the groom's best man was a work associate. At the reception they were doing toasts and the best man gets up and tells stories about how he thought the groom was really gay. I think he thought it would be hilarious but no one thought it funny, especially the bride. When he was done the bride's dad stood up and said, "Patrick needs a new best man. Any takers?" Folks avoided the guy like the plague for the rest of the night. From the last time this was posted, my ex-stepmom was getting married to my cousin. I really like my cousin, and my ex-stepmom is one of the worst people I know, so I tried to talk him out of it, but he was committed. They said their vows and everything, but when the pastor asked if anyone objected, I stood up. I talked about how terrible of a person my ex-stepmom was, and how she was tricking my cousin. I practically begged him not to marry her, but he wouldn't even look at me. After a minute of me talking, I realized that everyone else in the room was actively hating me, so I left. They're still married to this day, 5 years next Thursday. They seem to be genuinely happy. I'm starting to wonder if I just had the wrong idea about my ex-stepmom. I go over to their house sometimes and eat dinner. My dad marrying his third wife. My stepbrother and I were in the wedding party. He was about 6, I was 10. The preacher asks if anyone objects, and my brother raises his hand so very politely. My dad asks why, and my stepbrother replies, "Because I want you to promise to take me fishing whenever I want, first." I was a waiter for a venue that had a lot of weddings. We typically watched the wedding ourselves from the second floor, and waited for everyone to come up for the reception. A guest for the wedding arrived a few hours early, so he sat in the restaurant and had a few too many drinks. He yelled, "Don't fucking do it. Bride's name here. He's an asshole." There was the typical gasp by the crowd. Then it was just silence as people from the bar, not part of the wedding, but the bar was outside on the same floor, escorted him out. I really want to know what happened. I was at a college buddy's wedding when a drunken childhood friend of the bride tried to stand up and profess his love for her. The bride's father immediately stood up and tried to haul off said drunken guy by the ear, except he was so pissed he pulled too hard and partially severed the guy's ear. I was also pretty tipsy and laughed a little too hard when the dude screamed like a small girl, but I was not the only one. A few people even applauded. When I was a very young lad, I attended a wedding in which a man stood up at the point of objection and exclaimed, "You forgot the bread knife." For the next 15 years my brother and I were convinced that it was wedding tradition to have a bread knife, and forgetting it was a mortal sin. Turns out the guy was just nuts. My best friend calls me up out of the blue one day and asks me if I can travel the upcoming weekend to his place from PHX to the mountains of Northern Az. He says he finally popped the question to his GF of 5 years and mother of his 2 kids, and they are just gonna have a small impromptu get together of friends and family to seal the deal. So I drive 3 hours and show up to his huge family on his lawn, and her's nowhere in sight. I find him, and he's trying to hide the fact that he is fucking shook up. Dig a little deeper and find out he hasn't seen the bride in 2 days, and he thinks she's not gonna show. "She's not coming," were his exact words. I calm him down with a couple shots of Patron and assure him she just wants to make a dramatic entrance. She never shows. Bride's mother shows up finally and tells my buddy, in private, that she took off to Phoenix and has been at an ex's for the last couple days. He announces weddings off to the 30 or so people there, and being the dope ass Mexican family they are, we all eat and party and pin it to the fuck out of the rest of the night anyway, and blame cold feet. She doesn't come back for 2 months. Leaves him with his painting business and the kids to take care of. Then he calls me up and says it's back on. She needed to get some shit out of her system. Objection. Made by yours truly. The only thing she needed to get out of her system was her ex's come out of her skanky twat. I couldn't be there, so I just talked shit to her relentlessly online. Anytime she posted anything, there I was, reminding her that she's the biggest shit-filled cunt on earth for doing that to the best guy I know. They did get married, and she eventually blocked me, and their marriage lasted about 4 more months. I still have dreams about throat punching her and having the jury say at my assault trial Not guilty. Bitch had it coming. Seriously though, violence against ladies is bad. Any violence against anyone for that matter. But damn it, wold felt good. Stay in school. Don't biff the half pipe, kids. Had a friend object at my first wedding. He came right up to the altar, spouting off about all my shortcomings. Myself and my groomsmen all leveled our guns at him, but he just wouldn't shut up. So we fired. He lay in a heap on the ground for the rest of the ceremony. Mind you, this was all planned. It was a purity, Renaissance-y wedding, and the guns were black powder, sans the shot, of course. We all played our parts a bit too well, though. A few of the more gullible guests thought there'd been a legit murder at the wedding. At first, it was awesome. I was tempted to speak up as I knew the bride wasn't really that into the groom. It was a weird Baptist semi-arranged marriage thing. Needless to say, the bride was a bit of a wild child, so I didn't see a marriage to a minister lasting. I said nothing though, and made an excuse to leave in a hurry. Anyway, the wheels started to come off during the honeymoon and she ended up sleeping with his brother, who was the black sheep of the family and who had only returned for the wedding. Cool guy. They ended up having a kid together. I wasn't born yet, but it is a funny family story. I have a very large extended family. Mom has 6 brothers and 3 sisters. When Uncle C, the 4th son, got married, it was fairly obvious that most of his siblings didn't care for his wife-to-be. The day before the wedding, Uncle C got hurt at work, sliced open his hand, and needed a lot of stitches. He was given very strong painkillers. During the ceremony, Uncle C was high on painkillers and started to feel lightheaded. While in the middle of saying their vows, he began to wander off stage, and my Uncle L stood up and began cheering. Uncle L then shouted, "Attaboy, C." L's wife pulled him back into the pew and shushed him. Later in the ceremony, Uncle C and his wife were kneeling in the church doing some prayer thing. As Uncle C was facing away from the guests, everyone could see the bottoms of his shoes. One of my uncles had painted, "Help me" on the soles of his dress shoes. When I married my DH, one of my closest friends was in seminary. I asked her to stand up for me and bless our marriage during the ceremony. Although I'm not particularly religious, my husband is, and I thought it would be meaningful for my dear friend to lend her blessing to our marriage. She acted thrilled to do so and did a lovely job at the ceremony. Then at the reception, she cornered my new husband and scolded him for marrying me, telling him that, since he's a Christian and I'm not, we were unequally yoked and in the eyes of the Lord should not have married. She then informed him that it was his job as the head of the family to bring me to Christ. I happened to walk up to them just as she finished admonishing him. He was sheet white, but I didn't learn the full extent of the conversation until later. I ended the friendship obviously, at which point she tried giving me one of those "I'm sorry if you were offended" apologies. I don't miss her. My grandfather humorously objected to my parents marrying, despite having given them his blessing. He held up a photo of my dad with 2 black eyes, a bleeding cheek and a muddy face, university rugby game, and asked the wedding crowd, "Would you let this man marry your daughter?" Everyone laughed and said no. Years later us kids still hear the story at family gatherings. 20 years on, when my granddad moved, dad mailed the new neighborhood photos of my 70-year grandfather with pink dyed hair with the caption, "Would you let this man live in your neighborhood?" We didn't find out till weeks later, and that's how I learned that revenge is a dish best served cold. It's not quite 5 minutes after the objection, but oh well.